Ladies and gentlemen, we are now about to begin the fourth thematic roundtable for today, New Drivers of Globalization, Climate Change, AI, and Supply Chains. To moderate this roundtable, let's warmly welcome Mr. Zhang Wei, Deputy Secretary General and Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. The floor is yours.
Well, distinguished ambassadors, industrial leaders, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to board this ship of ideas elaborating on this subject, new drivers of globalization, climate change, AI, and supply chains. We now have panelists from diplomacy, industry, businesses, and academia, and others. I am Zhang Wei, moderator for this thematic roundtable. I'm like the lieutenant of this ship. Well then, hopefully I would now start to look at where we are amongst this big ocean of globalization, which is now going through transformative changes from market opening to trade expansion to technology connectivity. More and more, we are connecting with each other. We're now seeing rising powers, and we're redefining the relations between nations, between businesses. Now, the evolving AI, supply chains, and other technologies have now become the driving forces for our cooperation or competition. They're now reshaping our global economy. They are also reforming our international order and industrial capacity and impacting on geopolitical balance. And geopolitical conflicts and low carbon, green economy, and others are now constituting this complex global landscape. And we are now developing this sustainable and safe ecosystem. And now we have seen AI bringing us some ethical issues as well. The global supply chain is now shifting from efficiency to resilience. So, amongst all the challenges, there are opportunities in green energy, in sustainability, and in stable supply chains. And also, these are important forces for us to address fragmentation and other challenges. So, for this forum, we bring together prominent figures from different stakeholders. You are the permanent drivers of all these forces. So together, we can find new drivers of globalization. We can find tangible solutions to the current problems. And now we have prepared some major topics or questions to you. I would like to rerun all these so that in your sharing you could choose the most interested in topics. First, how do we redefine world green trade and reshaping global order? And what kind of AI governance model can we best support globalization while mitigating the risk of ethics? And in reshaping supply chains, how do our strategies influence the global market and the regional economy? Fourthly, climate change and transformation, digital governance are now seeing some new potential for global cooperation. And what are the outcomes of such cooperations? And for developed countries, how can they play a more important role in the next phase of globalization so that they can protect the equity, fairness, and fruitful outcomes. Well, so much from me. Now, let me give the floor to our panelists. So, for this roundtable, we have 12 panelists, but Lu Ruquan had to leave earlier for other important arrangements. So now we have 11 panelists with us for this panel. They're all prominent figures from different sectors, very influential leaders in their specific field. For each and every panelist, you will have 5 minutes to share your perspectives. So now, without further ado, let us give the floor to Craig Burchell, the chair of the Digital Maritime Silk Road 2030 International Chamber of Commerce, UK. Please. Well, thank you. Very glad to come back to Beijing. I've been working in Huawei in Shenzhen for 4 years.
First, a warning. I'm a lawyer, and I'm from the business sector. So we tend to be very pragmatic and very business-oriented and very practical. So I've witnessed the power of globalization to create prosperity. I've spent 30 years in globalization, 20 years as global head of trade for Philips Electronics, 5 years living in China, and 4 years at Huawei, SVP, dealing with American sanctions is one of my topics. I'm proud that we have been part of the free trade agreements, the International Information Technology Agreement. This liberalization over the last 30, 40 years has given smartphones to billions of people around the world. It's a success. Globalization can bring prosperity. But other forces, greed, profit-taking, concentration of wealth, produced inequality and unhappiness. And this balance has now been disrupted by storms, political storms, by COVID. So there is a new paradigm shift away from the efficiencies that we built on before and towards more resilience. Are we decoupling? I've always said no. Building more resilience, yes, there's more space and slack in the supply chains, but multilateralism is definitely under threat. And over the last years, the last couple of years, I've been talking with friends and colleagues from China, India, the Emirates, London, the United Kingdom, Europe. And this digital trade network of contacts, we have been thinking how to create new forms of cooperation on the multilateral. And what we have come up with now, we call the Catalyst Project. The Catalyst Project is business-led, government-supported, and organizationally founded in the multilateral system. We focus on the Europe, Gulf, Asia, China trade corridor. This project is all about making digitalization of supply chains. Digitalization of supply chains has been tried many times before. Previous attempts have all failed because they confront limitations in commercial interests, profit interests, trust issues, and political. Our project is designed differently. It is designed for the buyers and for the sellers. It's designed to be extremely practical. We are calling it, so we focus on the Europe, Gulf, China trade corridor because it is the most significant trade corridor in the whole world. It doesn't matter what we call Belt and Road Initiative, Silk Roads, Eastern Gateway, call it whatever you want, but this corridor is the single most important artery of trade between East and West. We want to digitalize it, and we want to create what's called the public digital infrastructure. This means interoperability between all the systems that work for all the companies in all the regions and between the regions and between the hubs. It is about one corridor, which makes us unique in our focus. It's about 5 hubs, the largest financial and logistics hubs in the world, in Rotterdam, London, Dubai, Mumbai, Singapore, and Beijing, Shanghai. We aim to create, what does it mean for buyers and sellers? It will mean transaction costs reduced 80%, cross-border time 70%, no courier costs, 0 paper, 100% digital trusted exchange of data instantaneously, and after some years we will embed finance into it so that trade becomes faster, cheaper, quicker, and it brings benefits to small and medium-sized enterprises directly. I have been asked to chair this project on behalf of the International Chamber of Commerce, and we are building support. That's why I'm here for a month in China and talking with the Chinese government representatives on international digitalization. I return to Europe via India next week, and we already in the Emirates, and the ICC United Kingdom is leading this initiative. So it's a new form of cooperation. It's unique because it's focusing on one trade corridor, linking 5 hubs, and linking all the experts so that this chain will be fully interoperable and all the systems between them will speak to each other the same digital language. It's called interoperability, and our goal is the public digital infrastructure. And we believe by focusing on one corridor and getting it right and learning our mistakes as we go along, this can be replicated across every single trade route and corridor across the world. But we have to start somewhere. We have to be pragmatic. We're business people, so that's why we want to start with Euro-Asia, and we want to start by creating a digital Silk Route on the sea. Thank you very much for inviting me to present it.
谢谢格雷格先生啊，刚才您讲的那个。
Thank you, Craig. Connecting East and West, a public digital trade corridor. I fully agree. To navigate globalization to a new direction, a public digital infrastructure is vital. But it calls for standardization. And to facilitate logistics, these are very important. And also, this is a very important infrastructure for green transformation. Thank you for sharing. Now, let me give the floor to our guest from North Europe, His Excellency Michael Starbeck Christensen, Ambassador of Denmark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhang Liu. Very happy to be able to speak. Good to see Northern European representatives, because I think we represent some of the countries that has chosen to go in a new green transition, green energy direction, which is a direction that sets a model for other parts of the world. And I think what we've seen, that the climate goals we set, the green industrial strategies we produce, has meant that from being a part of the economy in the periphery, it's now center stage and reshaping how we trade, how we invest, and how we develop our countries. Right now in Brazil, in Belém, we have the UN climate conference taking place, and it's entering into the last few days. And I'm sure in Belém there will be a lot of talk about guilt, responsibility, obligation, the usual negative discussions we often see at these multilateral conferences, but actually it should be about opportunity. last year, more than $1.8 trillion was the investment we reached in investment in global clean energy, and we outpaced investment in fossil energy. So now we see that there is more investments going to the renewables and that it benefits those countries, that makes that a priority in their energy plans and consumption. We see a shift in global value change because some of the fastest growing traded products today are solar, PV, wind equipment, heat pumps, batteries, and electric vehicles. So we see a shift in also consumer habits, government policies. And I think these energy transition technologies really much become a backbone in our development models. The International Energy Agency estimates that by 2030, clean tech exports will represent over 1/3 of all growth in global goods trade. So also for emerging economies, the green value chain become the entry point to industrial upgrading. So there's really a shift on the way. In Denmark, we use also some tools. One we call green reform, which is a macroeconomic model, and I'm a big fan of using models, economic models that prove the usefulness and the benefits of policy making. So it's not just a policy debate, but it actually proven how it can change things. And this macroeconomic model we use will allow policymakers to assess economic and fiscal impact of climate policies and make sure that new regulation benefits both industry, investors, and create the predictable environment for sustainable growth. So I think that kind of model, it's actually been developed by our Ministry of Finance. It helps the political discussion and the public support because it actually proves the beneficial elements of the green transition. We also do modeling work with China in a bilateral cooperation where we each year publish the China Energy Transformation Outlook. It has just been presented in Belém at the climate conference. And it's a cooperation between China Energy Research Institute and the Danish Energy Agency, where we map out pathways for China to reach its own climate targets and bridge the gap between vision and action. And these reports, again, are solidly based on academic and technical evidence, and therefore also shows how it's possible to reach the targets that are set in the Chinese energy 5-year plan. So I think those kind of tools we can develop are extremely important for the proof that we are actually moving in the right direction. Let me just finally mention a thing that's been a bit criticized in China is the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM. But again, I don't see it as a barrier for trade. I see it as an incentive for low carbon production and accelerate decarbonization in the global supply chain. So I think we also need political regulatory instruments that push the transition in the right way, and we shouldn't call them barriers, but incentives for a greener development. So I think they play a vital role as well. Thank you very much.
好，感谢大使阁下啊。
Thank you, Ambassador. Just now you have shared with us in terms of green technology and green energy transition, digital development, from the production side to the consumption to the decision-making and industrialization, and China-Denmark cooperation from the policy side. Because you have the new green development and policy making, and I myself also be participating into some of the discussions like this. And in terms of the CBAM, green trade development, whether it can promote the green transition, and we have seen the methodologies from European side is very advanced, and how to synergize everyone and to keep the same pace of this transition in terms of the standard and also in terms of the integration of the efforts of all stakeholders in the next several years. We believe there's a room for us to make efforts too. Thank you for your sharing. And for that, I'd like to move on to another Nordic country. I'd like to invite from Norwegian, Ambassador from Norway to China, His Excellency Wabino David.
Zhang, it's an honor for me to be on such a distinguished panel. I'm very happy to have several of my North European colleagues with me, and I don't think it's a coincidence that you have so many North Europeans here, because the concern about the drivers of globalization, and these drivers in particular, are very high on the agenda for different reasons different reasons for the different areas in the North European countries. I also liked you said in your opening that we are moving from efficiencies to resilience, and I like to agree and disagree with that. I mean, partially, of course, we cannot move away from the efficiencies because the efficiencies are extremely important to us. The reason why we have had a development in the world where we managed, we've seen hundreds of millions and even billions of people move out of poverty, has been because we have been able to exploit those efficiencies. And so in maintaining those efficiencies lies a lot of welfare for a lot of people. But then it also turns out that it's been going too far. And I think a combining theme of the three drivers that are sort of the basis of this session, two of them, the problems, the challenges are manifest, and in one, the challenges are potential. I think Michael made a very good case for the positive story around climate change. Necessity is the mother of invention, and I think we have been finding a lot of opportunities in the green economy, and we continue to do so. Also, Norwegian companies working here in China with Chinese companies. And then, of course, at the same time, climate change is one of the consequences of globalization, and one of the great dangers to globalization, because the resilience of our economies and the resilience of our societies are being fundamentally challenged. Supply chains are very much on vogue these days. Lots of people concerned. This is also an example of us being able to drive efficiencies to a point where we have become maybe too efficient or maybe too fragile. We are, and right now is of course a discussion between countries and who sells what to whom, and who protects themselves from who, but it's also a question of us collectively putting ourselves in a position where we are, at any given point, not just one political decision away from a problem, but we are one storm away from a problem, one pandemic away from a problem, one earthquake away from a problem, because when we have so many things that are made maybe in just one place in the world, and that one place is many different places in the world for many different inputs, the whole system as such becomes too fragile. And then, of course, so these are manifest challenges, and then you have the future challenge of AI. And I am a political scientist. I don't know the ins and outs of my son is a computer scientist, and he tries to explain it to me almost on a weekly basis, and he usually fails. But I'm hearing a lot of very intelligent people that know a lot about AI saying that this is the salvation for the future of mankind, and then another group that knows a lot about it saying that this is the possible doom of mankind. And then we should prepare that for both possibilities. Also when we consider them, and consider that this will become fundamental to the world economy. And as so many other times, I think a lot of the solution we will find in international cooperation. We see a lot of it on climate now in Belém. I think CBAM is going to be a very interesting solution on a way to find collective solutions to the dilemmas on climate. I think we also have to find collective solutions on the supply chains. And then on AI, it is important that we, sooner rather than later, and in our case, we want a UN-centered approach to that, try to find common governance structures so that we don't release something onto the world that we don't know how to control and where it will take us. So for the world to be as efficient as possible, but as resilient as necessary.
好啊，谢谢大家。
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, indeed, like you have mentioned, in face with challenges, we have to concert our joint efforts together and join hands together and put our thoughts together, especially in terms to improve the resilience of the supply chain, which is very fragile right now. It is highly pressurized. I agree with you about the example like the earthquake. And I'm thinking that when an earthquake is taking place, what can we do about the systematic damages to other elements which are linked with each other? And we have to reduce the damages immediately so as to reduce the possibilities that more sub or secondary earthquakes would occur. And that is consensus we have to reach. In terms of the green transition, we have mentioned the EU countries and CBAM and a Green Deal. Very important to offer a lot of options and inspirations to us, and the trials are very good. Also, EU side made a lot of efforts. Some countries, including US, also have adopted a Green Deal, and China has its policies for green transition. I suggest that we have to come together to push for this transition, because most of the efforts need to be done by the developing countries, but this means that the cost for doing so is very high. So I believe that we must build the very good resilience of the supply chain so as to reduce the cost of the industry and the countries as well as the households. Like, for example, the cost and the pressure of the cost to the household can be very strenuous. And we must offer a very good momentum and a mechanism from the policies, from the approach, from the decision-making process. We can provide the references from each other, and we have to make joint efforts. And talking about the resilience of the supply chain, my position is that we at least have to reduce the stress from the supply chain vulnerabilities to damage the work and operation of the businesses. In this regard, we have a lot of room to explore. Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, indeed, Nordic countries. It's not coincident that we gathered together. It is very necessary, because what you're doing is very good. And with that, I'd like to invite Ambassador from the Netherlands to China, His Excellency Andrea Haspels.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And obviously, I guess nobody here would be interested today what I tell about Nexperia. But the Nexperia case gives me the opportunity to say something about supply chains and supply resilience, which I'm happy to do. First of all, the Netherlands is a country that strongly believes in free trade, in a rule-based system, with fair and equal rights and obligations for every country. About 1/3 of our GDP relies on foreign trade. And over the past few decades, we have seen supply chains become increasingly global in nature, which has led to large gains in efficiency and innovation. And we all benefited from that. Many countries, including China and the Netherlands, have been able to develop their economies because of the benefits of international trade. Yet the world has also shown and come to realization that these developments have impacted our economic resilience. All these global and complex supply chains make certain supply chains very vulnerable. Let me provide you with 3 examples. The first one is the COVID crisis. I think this period showed to Europe our enormous dependence on other countries for vaccines, for masks, for face masks, and suddenly we had to grapple with shortages. And it made us realize that sometimes in order to be resilient, it is important to build in a certain slack into our system. Second, I would like to mention as an example our energy dependence on Russia. When Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine started, we were hugely dependent on Russia for oil and gas. And not wanting to fund Russia's war machine and to comply with the sanctions against Russia, we suddenly needed to rapidly decrease our energy imports from Russia. And this came to huge cost for business and for our society. So the lesson there was also we do not need to be dependent on one single country. And thirdly, I would like to mention China's dominance in the production and refining of critical raw materials. And the export controls that China has implemented on critical raw materials have led to an upheaval for European businesses. And it's just another example of how being dependent on another country can make supply chains vulnerable. And to be more resilient for such events, we just need to de-risk our value chains that are strategic in nature. For example, by diversifying our supply chain, by stimulating innovation, and by strengthening our European ecosystem. And I would like to stress that these efforts are not, I repeat, not focused against China. It is a broad-based effort to avoid strategic dependencies on one single country. Other countries are making similar efforts. In fact, China already started to integrate economic resilience in its policies at least 10 years before the EU did. And of course, China keeps on going this course. If you look at the proposals for China's next 5 years plan, technological self-reliance will continue to be a key goal for China. And we respect that. But it also influences our thinking. Whereas mutual dependencies can help promote peace and stability, one-sided dependencies do not. But we want to and we need to keep working together. We have far more interests in common than we have our differences. And we continue to see many opportunities to work with China in line with our continued commitment to free trade and multilateralism. I can mention a number of examples for cooperation. In the interest of time, I will leave that out, but believe me, there are more than enough. Let me go back and end with where I started with, that is the Nexperia case. The Dutch government found it necessary to intervene in Nexperia due to a serious governance issues that posed an acute threat to the continuity of production capacity of Nexperia within Europe. And the measure that the Dutch government took was, again, not aimed against China, but rather an intervention to safeguard our security, our supply, and our value chain. Yesterday, as some of you might know, the Minister of Economic Affairs from the Netherlands has decided to suspend the order based on the Goods Availability Act in close cooperation with our European and international allies. And we also agreed with MOFCOM on the importance of restoring the supply chain in the interest of both our countries. So on this specific case, discussions between China and the Netherlands will continue, and we will continue to engage in a constructive dialogue with the Chinese authorities. Thank you very much.
谢谢大使啊。刚才
Thank you. As you mentioned, yes, indeed, China and Netherlands must stand on a higher perspective for bilateral and global cooperation so that we can together address the challenges in energy and others, so that we do not depend on a single source of energy. Actually, China has been making its own exploration because China itself is facing challenges, including energy. And in terms of global governance, I think things are getting better in terms of regulation and others. Sometimes some regulations were legacy of the past, but these regulations must be improved or aligned to the changing times. So it is very important for us to work together toward the same direction. Yes, sometimes challenges might be good because that brings us together to discuss and to develop solutions, bilateral ones or multilateral ones. Now China is developing its 15th five-year plan, and now China has explored its specific pathway for development. And there are opportunities in the Chinese market, and also China will create opportunities for other countries. Now, European Union are committed to their green transformation and to facilitating trade and investment. So these are areas where we could work together, because no country or no national supply chain can work alone in this modern age. Thank you. Last but least, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Thoria Ibsen from Iceland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhang. I would like to address the issue of drivers of globalization in the context of the general context of global governance via three observations. The first one concerns the different implications of the various drivers that we're dealing with today in the global system. When we look at the background analysis provided by the CCG, it distinguishes between traditional drivers and new forces of international relations and chains. I found this interesting analysis that merits consideration. And I would certainly agree that market liberalization, trade expansion, and technological connectivity have been important drivers of multilateralism. These drivers create both interdependence and common challenges, and in situations of stability and mutual trust, these drivers tend to encourage the world community to manage international relations and to resolve shared problems through negotiations and cooperation. I would also argue that environmental challenges, including climate change, have also been major drivers of multilateralism. They have, in fact, while they're a problem, they have pushed states, businesses, and civil society onto the path of the green transition to the betterment of our humanity. Excuse me. I'm more concerned about, on the other hand, artificial intelligence and the evolving supply chain structures. These two are different in nature, and they're more aligned with aspirations of powerful industries and states to acquire global power and dominance. And these forces, if they're not properly managed, they're likely to contribute to more geopolitical confrontation and deepen inequalities. The second point I want to make around these drivers is, how do we successfully manage them? Do we do it with more multilateralism, or do we move towards multipolarity? And here, of course, there's a certainly concern in the world community that that we are facing change and the international system is at a crossroad. But the question is, which path are we going to choose out of this crossroad? My answer is that, and is quite evident, the answer is multilateralism and not multipolarity. Because history tells us that an effective and responsive multilateral systems underpinned by the respect of the United Nations Charter and international law is the best possible guarantee for our security. And for the large and the powerful that do see an opportunity in gaining more influence and even dominance in the multilateral world, that favor multipolarity, we should heed the warnings of the Secretary General Guterres, which has reminded us of the experience of Europe of the multipolarity that led to the disaster of the World War I, with the disaster for Europe that we all know. So my third point then, excuse me, I'm having difficulty with my voice. Excuse me. The third point that I want to make then, and the final observation, if we favor multilateralism or multipolarity, what do we have to do to reform the system? Now, I've made the point that the UN should be the core of that reform, but the UN has to be made to fit the purpose. There's been many achievements of the United Nations system and multilateral institutions of the post-Second World War period. But trust is dwindling in these institutions, and many inefficiencies and ineffectiveness of the institutions have been pointed out. Second, though, we have to keep in mind that the most important element of effective international systems is inclusiveness and the full participation of all states. And therefore, if we are going to reform the international system, we have to do it together on the basis of the same premise. And this is why it's very important, I think, that the world community follows carefully and participates actively in the Secretary General's UN aid to reform process in updating the UN system, and avoid get sidetracked by alternative proposals. Because fundamental to the UN-80 initiative is the recommitment to the rule of law and to all the three pillars of the UN Charter, notably peace and security, human rights, and development. These three are intertwined and inseparable. Peace and security cannot be sustainable without human rights and development and human rights will not be possible without peace and security. The UN Charter is a charter belonging to people of the world. It is not just the property of governments. Individuals and peoples are also granted rights to fundamental freedoms by international law. This is why respect for human rights, one of the three pillars of the UN Charter, must also be an integral part of the reform of the multilateral system for it to prevail. Thank you very much, sir.
谢谢大使啊。
Thank you very much. I fully agree with your points. The future of globalization is the future of multilateralism. Countries, including China, oppose unilateralism. We always favor multilateralism because together we can work out solutions for common challenges. In terms of United Nations and the Security Council reform, together with many European countries, China has been advocating that reform so that our global governance can be more inclusive in terms of human rights, in security, and in development. China has proposed some initiatives that are in line with the UN Charter, Global Security Development Initiative, and GDI and GCI, and demonstrating how China has been promoting a more inclusive approach toward toward a better global governance system. So it is not just about big or small countries or countries with different cultural backgrounds. All countries must equally share opportunities for development. And of course, developed countries can lead developing countries for North-South, South-South cooperation, but must be multilateral. And that is highly aligned with China's global initiatives. Thank you very much for sharing. Now let's shift from North European perspectives to the Chinese perspective. In China, there are a lot of people engaged in environmental protection and climate change. you would see the blue sky is the result of our endeavors. And some of our deserts have now been turned into animal husbandry farms and wind power farms. And now we have the next panelist, Ma Jun, from the Institute of Public and Environment Affairs.
For inviting me to this forum. I just came back from the UN Climate Conference, COP30. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Major progresses have been made through collaborative efforts, as the Mr. Ambassador Ibsen noted, but enormous gap still remains. Globally, we're falling short of the climate targets. Meanwhile, a growing global governance fragmentation threatens to divert attention from the climate crisis, as well as the international cooperation on sustainable development goals. In this challenging landscape, doing more with less is no longer optional, it's imperative. As a member of the UNFCCC Synergy Expert Committee, I was invited to speak at the COP30 on China's experience in integrating climate action, economic growth, and social progress into a unified strategy. Over the past 12 years, as Mr. Zhang noted, aggressive clean air policies reduced sulfur dioxide from 20 million tons to just 2.4 million, while Beijing's PM 2.5 levels dropped from nearly 90 micrograms to 30. And yet today, traditional end-pipe solutions have reached their limits. Further progress demands a more fundamental transformation. This is where the Beautiful China initiative came in, and a strategic framework aligning pollution control, green expansion, and high-quality growth. At its core is the energy transition, which has already delivered remarkable results. China hit its 2030 renewable target 6 years earlier and continues to lead the world in solar and wind deployment. Meanwhile, the economy is electrifying 9 times faster than the rest of the world, with EVs making up nearly 50% of the new car sales. Critically, this low-carbon transition is also driving economic growth and resilience, proving that sustainability, security, and development can reinforce each other. I also want to note that China's clean air and water action began with massive monitoring and disclosure, which not only help empower public oversight, strengthen government enforcement, but also enable market-based solutions like green supply chain and green finance. Last month, we released the 12th annual report on the Green Supply Chain Corporate Index. The findings show that companies have tapped into the data to motivate tens of thousands of suppliers to enhance performance. And of course, major European companies like Adidas and Puma and Marks and Spencer and Apple and Dell, they excel, run on top. But a whole group of Chinese companies have also entered into the global top 50, led by those in the new energy industry. So the corporate data carbon disclosure we collected topped 5 billion tons. And China is dividing the country into 44,000 eco-function zoning, including 3 million square kilometers of the red line zones. With the belief that synergy also needs to start from monitoring and transparency. At COP30, we also published the global city green and low carbon transparency index. And the initial assessment results, of course, we see developed cities like New York, London, Sydney, Paris, Hong Kong, and Tokyo came on top, but Beijing also got into top 5, and Shanghai, Shenzhen quickly catching up, with a whole group of cities in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. They still lag behind. There's a huge potential for cities to share the best practices on transparency, which we believe that will help
not just help to enhance their own efficiency and effectiveness in dealing with climate change, pollution, and local pollution, and motivate more progress on SDG. But transparency globally will also help bridge the gap of distrust, which is much needed in today's world. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ma. Yes, you have mentioned that China's practices, experiences, and international cooperation. You have mentioned that as a green transition entity or carrier, there is a lot of work that China can do. And the cities from Europe or the cities of China and the cities of other continents, they have tried a lot of innovations. So the city-centric transition for the energy is a very good model for international cooperation. Thank you. With that, I'd like to invite the perspective from the academia, and I'd like to invite Andy Mark, also a senior research fellow of CCG, professor in Beijing Foreign Studies University, and who is also a very good commentator of media.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's been several months since the last China International Supply Chain Expo, but I want to suggest that the significance of that event is still rippling outward, and not for the reasons people usually notice. Most commentary focused on numbers, trade deals signed, countries represented, Fortune 500 firms attending. But beneath those headlines lies something far more interesting, a shift in worldview. Let me put it this way. For most of human history, we looked at the night sky and saw scattered stars. Only later did we realize they formed galaxies, structured dynamic systems, not random points of light. That recognition wasn't just scientific, it was ontological. We began to understand reality differently. And this is what I think China is doing now with supply chains. In the West, the term supply chain is still mostly a metaphor, something we say to describe a sequence of steps. It's shorthand, useful but vague. China, by contrast, is treating the supply chain as a real thing, an object that can be measured, governed, and defended. A system with structure, vulnerability, and sovereignty. And it's building institutions around that idea. Chain chiefs, physical expos, digital twins, contingency drills, and cross-border simulations. This isn't just good policy, it's a different ontology. Why does this matter? Because once you start treating supply chains like galaxies, structured, interconnected, observable, you unlock entirely new capabilities. You can map them the way astronomers chart constellations. You can fortify them the way engineers reinforce infrastructure. You can even broker trust around them, the way airspace or maritime routes are managed collectively. Except now, the object in question is the flow of semiconductors, rare earths, EV batteries, and food staples. In short, by recognizing the supply chain as an object, China has created a platform for action across borders, industries, and ideologies. Now, some may dismiss this as technocratic theater, but I'd argue the opposite. In a world of rising complexity and geopolitical friction, those who can see structure where others see chaos, those who recognize new entities before others do, will have a strategic edge. This is what ontological vision gives you, not just new tools, but new terrain to operate on. And whether we agree with China's methods or not, this ontological move deserves close attention. Because the next great competition may not be just about the control over physical resources or digital platforms, but over what kinds of things we treat as real, governable, and worth protecting. So no, this isn't just about a trade fair in Beijing. It's about something deeper. The ability to recognize structure where others see only flow. The decision to treat supply chains as systems worth governing, not just reacting to. And the quiet shift in worldview that may define who adapts and who lags as global complexity deepens. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, personally coming back from this expo, and just now you have mentioned that after viewing a lot of products and the visions of the world and the thinking about the supply chain from the direction of the development of humanity, we have seen the new sparkles of ideas to navigate humanity to develop in the future. So be it in China or other countries, very possible that we can see some scattered points in the future supply chain or future governance. We would develop the new constellation of governance, and usually the new species will be given birth from the new uncharted water. And we should bear in mind this kind of possibilities, and we have to make joint efforts to give birth to these new things to happen. Thank you. So next, I'd like to invite CEO, Tasmania Branch, Australia-China Business Council, Mr. David Morris.
Well, thank you, Mr. Zhang. Now, I'm sorry to say to those who fear multipolarity, but it's arrived. You only have to walk out the door to see it. We are now living in a multipolar world. I think we all understand why Europeans have a deep concern about multipolarity. We understand European history and European colonial history, and we understand that multipolarity has led to disaster in the European case. We also understand, I think, why the United States fears multipolarity, because the United States identifies itself as the leader of the world, and so it prefers, naturally, unipolarity. But we here in the Asia-Pacific, we see the world a bit differently. And this is the thing, when you travel the world, you realise that the lived experience is different in different places. And in the Asia-Pacific, our history in this part of the world for thousands of years has been multipolarity is actually more stable than hegemony, than competition between two major powers or one hegemon. Members of the Asia-Pacific community do not want one hegemon, and they do not want bipolarity either, where two hegemons are fighting it out and asking us to choose. This is not, I've just come from Malaysia, where I was speaking at the Global Chinese Economic and Technology Summit, and I can tell you that every speaker at that summit in Kuala Lumpur yesterday was making this very point, that we do not want to choose. We do not want to be asked to choose. And I say this as someone who represents the business community in Australia. We do not want to be asked to choose. Our economic prosperity is tied up with this country here, with China. Our economic future is tied up with this country, but also, of course, we equally want to have strong and resilient and ongoing relationships with the United States and with Europe and other parts of the world. So we are going to have to come to terms with a new multipolar world. Now, what does this mean? Well, what it means for supply chains, what it means for governing technologies, what it means for the climate is that actually we need to deepen our multilateral cooperation. Multipolarity is going to need multilateralism to work. The very reason multilateralism is not working at the moment is the resistance of some to multipolarity. It is the resistance towards compromise, towards sitting down and having dialogue like we're doing here. It is the resistance to actually finding common ground where we can work together. In the case of technology, it's this fear that we must enter into a binary world where one form of technology is a good and trusted one and another form we can demonise as being untrustworthy. This is not the way engineers see technology. This is not the way any technology expert I've ever interviewed for my research, and I've just written a book about this, The New Era of Risk, published by Ethics Press. Experts in cybersecurity tell us that risks come from everywhere. They don't just come from one country or one state. They can come from teenagers in their bedroom. They can come from all kinds of non-state actors. So actually, we need to be using multilateralism more rather than less in a multipolar world, and we need to agree rules around how do we regulate technology so that it is safe for humans. How do we address the climate crisis, which absolutely requires multilateralism? So I've changed what I was going to say today in response to this concern about multipolarity, but I want to make the point that multipolarity and multilateralism have to go hand in hand, because this is now the world we're in. This is the real world of the 21st century. And so the only way we're going to address the securitization of supply chains, the unwinding of our action on climate change, the only way to address this is actually to deepen our multilateral cooperation. Now that's going to require compromise, it's going to require dialogue, it's going to require building trust, and we're only going to build trust once we see some successful models. And we've got a long way to go, I think. I think we're still spiralling downwards at the moment, but we've got to drop the fear, I think, about a new multipolar world and actually embrace it, because in this part of the world, in the Asia-Pacific, multipolarity is a good thing, and free trade without protectionist barriers and without fake political risks and without fake geopolitical risks, actual factual-based, evidence-based risk management is what we're going to require more of in the future. Thank you.
谢谢大卫先生啊。
Well, thank you, Mr. Morris. Yes, as you said, many countries really do not like to see a unipolar world, but still they're concerned with the multipolar world. And China has proposed some initiatives, and multilateralism or multipolarization are the general direction. So in China's philosophy, there's no notion of zero-sum game or either white or black. It is not the underlying logic of Chinese philosophy, because in China we appreciate all different forms of beauty, and we agree to disagree. So Darwinism or zero-sum game have never been and will never be a part of our mindset, because we try to create greater good for all and common prosperity for all. And so, because a unipolar world is not the world that we, China, strive for. So thank you, Mr. Maurice. You've been in China for many years, so you really have a deep understanding about China and the Chinese people. Thank you. Now, we have a shared perspective from Australia, from Europe. Now, let me give the floor to Ravender Wu, founder of the Asian Network. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Thanks, CCG and Dr. Henri Wong for inviting me for this important conference. I'm very happy to speak among distinguished panelists. So I will try to be brief and concise, especially at the time of this day. My intervention will be divided in 3 parts. The first will be on geopolitics and geoeconomics from the Global South with a focus on Asia. The second will be key challenges for the Global South to address, and finally, some alternatives and solutions. So first, we notice that the Global South is a significant economic and demographic force. Almost 2/3 of the world working age population lives in the Global South, more than 40% of the world's energy and transitions metals are produced there. But also I want to underline the importance of China in the Global South and, as mentioned in by our previous panelists, in a multipolar world. China is the largest trading partner for the Global South. The US remains the more important investment partner. But China also leading the Belt and Road Initiative, signing with 120 countries. Initiative also like RCEP, but also a driving force for the BRICS and recently to the SCO Summit, engaging with Central Asia and Middle East. On our previous panel, we got some German representatives, so I'm happy to share Dutch Bank Research Institute publications who in May 2025 shared these very important key takeaways from this report. Among 5 components, key metrics from all the 120 countries in Global South, they analyze 5 dimensions: working age population, manufacturing, financial, military spending, and energy resources. So the result is very interesting. 4 of 10 ASEAN economies are in the top 15: Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. So what does it show? The global growth will be from South and Southeast Asia. This is a new center of gravity. So my second part will be more on key challenges. That's why we are here to discuss. The first is, of course, the shift in supply chain. Regardless of where tariff ends up, companies currently manufacturing in China and serving US consumers will likely reconsider producing choices given new uncertainties. Number 2 is the movement of people. We note that 125% of the world population growth until 2040 is projected to be driven by the Global South. But also migrations is connected with climate extreme conditions and, of course, insecurity flashpoints in Asia, such as the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, Myanmar crisis, and just recently with the border with Cambodia and Thailand. And last, sustainability effort to push climate action in particular. Global South is the bloc most at risk and having made the least progress in the last 20 years. China could emerge as a global leader around climate efforts for the Global South to follow. Now let me end with 5 potential alternatives and solutions. The first one should be developing economies should invest more in AI literacy, regional data centers, and of course, providing a frameworks to relevant local realities. Number 2, countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Morocco, Kenya, and Brazil could be the hubs for renewable manufacturing, carbon markets, and climate-resilient agriculture. Number 3, ASEAN, African Union, Mercosur can act as collective voices to rebalance global decision-making. Very important point, the significant role of middle powers. They should promote peaceful conflict resolution, contribute to global stability, but also, of course, advancing agreement on issues like climate change and peacekeeping. And finally, we should shift about our mindset from centralized, top-down, supranational governance to decentralized power composed of minilateralism, more flexible, action-oriented and smaller. But now let me end this intervention with the concept of polycrasis from a very famous French philosopher, Edgar Morin, in 1993, who talked about polycrasis, which is a situation in which multiple distinct crises occur simultaneously and interact in ways that amplify each other. So I think for the next decade, we need urgently to prioritize cooperation over conflict and, of course, connection over confrontation. I thank you all.
谢谢拉文德拉先生，确实。
Thank you, Mr. Nu Ravindra. Yes, indeed, our world is now facing the negative impact of world trade war and of some of the competition in terms of technology. So the Global South needs more say and more role to play. And of course, whether it is very important for us to shift from top down to bottom up so that the regional or local countries can propose more workable solutions. Actually, the last round of globalization was business at the core, but for this round of globalization, science and technology revolution has now diluted this force into more individuals. So now we look forward to more in-depth sharing. Now let me give the floor to our next panelist. A prominent figure from academia and diplomacy, a very renowned research fellow, CCG research fellow and strategic peace research center from China Foreign Affairs University, Mr. Su Hao. Microphone, please.
The name tag is on the round table, not without the microphone.
Okay.
Well, it seems that maybe I will not be the mainstream in the panelists. All right. So thank you for GGG to inviting me for this event. Maybe I would like to try my best to make something new in my presentation. I would like to put the 3W in my remarks. That means the 3 what of questionnaires in my presentations. First, what is the globalization? You know, these themes of the panelists talking about the globalization, right, of the new drivings of globalization. But what means the globalization? Actually, somehow I would like to criticize the traditional globalization. We remember 20 years ago, there's the quite famous book, or the bestseller books, titled "The World is Flat." So I remember at that time, there's quite a discussion about globalization, leading by the Western economy, including the United States and Europe, right? So the world is flat, you know. By this way, the Western economy expanded your economic capacity all over the world, including this part of the world, East Asia. So that means the Western economies have the dominant power over the globalization by that way. So the reason why in the Davos economic forums talking about the industrial 4.0. But this is much focused on the industry's orientation, dominated by the West since the modern time. But at the moment, I would say that the globalization always moved ahead into the new format. So our Chinese would like to use the word new globalization. Maybe my point, I would say that this globalization will put into the new format with their 3-dimension or multi-dimensional globalization. That means the globe already make it the kind of the multi-dimensional format, not only dominated by the West, but in the flat world. So in this way, I would say that multi-dimensional globalization, not only supported by the West, but also supported by the East or by the Global South. In particular, there are newly emerging economies, including China or other countries in the Global South, in Africa, in Latin America, or even in Southern Asia of India. So I would say that globalized will be supported by the multi-economic polar. So this is my point first. So this is the multi-dimensional globalization. The second, what is the driving force in the new globalization. In this panel's title called was the climate change, or the AI, or the supply chain, or the production chain. So I would say that when we redefine the globalization with the new primary force, I would say that the first we have the new science technology. The second we have the new supply chains or production chain. The third we have the new market, global market. So by this the new science technology, we're talking about the climate change, right? So many new emerging economies already have the new driving force with their, influenced by or supported by the renewable energy, like China, right? We have some kind of advantages for that, right? Or many other new economies. So there's new primary force. And also, we know that there's AI, to make these new industries could be spread out to the whole of the world. So China and, of course, the United States are the leading, primary force for this AI industry. Of course, plus Europeans' power, right, together. So that means make the new industries to reshape their primary force supported the new globalization. So by this kind of the new technology, science technology, new primary force of the industry, and then we have the new market. So China, not only we have the primary production, but also we have the one of the biggest market in the world. So welcome European economy invest into China and sell your products into China. So this is the new market for outside of the world. So I would say that by this kind of the new marketing patterns of the world, we should have the more space for our cooperation with each other. And the third, what would be the role of China in this new globalization? I would say that regarding the geographical location of China in the world, on the one hand, we are on the east, so-called far east of Eurasian continent. So this is a continental economy. And on the other hand, we are on the west side of the Pacific. So China is also the maritime economy, in the framework of the APEC to enhance our cooperation with the United States. This morning we discussed about this. So I would say that China could be the hub or the bridge between the Eurasian continental economic pattern on the one hand, and on the others, we are the maritime economies on the ocean of the Pacific to have our special relation with the United States and other, North and South American economies. So by this way, China could be the hub between the two sides to make China have a special role for us to be a major platform for the new globalization. Okay, that's my point. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Su. I agree with you. Previously, we thought the world is flat, but somehow probably folded by different formats. But it is yet to be reaching the final destination, and there's still a lot to offer, although we are far away from Europe. But we believe that space can be folded, and China can play the role as a bridge and as a hub to connect with all of us to face with the future problems altogether. Thank you, Director Su. With that, I'd like to give the floor to the industrial perspective. Vice President Wu Yanyan from BMW.
CCG for inviting me. I'm glad to be here to share some thoughts and ideas from business perspective. So my name is Wu Yanyan, and I'm from BMW Group. And as you may know, BMW is a global automotive company, and with more than 100 years history. So we operate in 14 countries, more than 30 production bases, and we service customers in over 140 countries. So it's a true global company. And It is this global positioning has enabled us through the challenges of the past century. However, recent years have witnessed the threat and challenges related to global decoupling. So we saw tariffs, we saw export control, we saw global supply chain disruptions. So in this context, discussing supply chain resilience is more significant than ever in today's challenging environment. I believe that globalization has contributed significantly to global prosperity over the past decades. On the contrary, the decoupling and fragmentation has inevitably posed substantial risks and threats to the stability and resilience of the global supply chain, leading to production shutdowns, increasing costs, and ultimately diminishing competitiveness while undermining the foundation for innovation. So taking at home in China, with China's speed strategy, BMW has taken China not just as BMW's largest single market, but also an indispensable innovation hub that drives our global transformation. Over the past 3 decades, BMW has grown together with our partners. We generally experienced 3 stages in supply chain strategy, from global to local, local for local, and local for global. Cooperation with CATL is a very good example. Through joint innovation, we have achieved breakthroughs that directly benefit not only our customers, but also have a wider impact, given that CATL has now grown into the world's largest power battery producer with around 40% global market share. The above 3-step supply chain strategy are proved to be very successful in the past decade. However, faced with new decoupling trend, shall we continue previous strategy package or make adjustment based on specific new dynamics? Many recent export control cases, including rare earth and also the Nexperia chips, have pushed us to rethink our strategy. Although there is no perfect answer yet, a local-for-local approach seems a more suitable strategy for today's bunny world. Bunny is the mirror reflecting the new reality: brittle systems, anxious people, nonlinear outcomes, and incomprehensible complexity. So looking ahead, the green transformation is fundamentally driving the new industrial revolution, where a powerful convergence of clean energy, big data, and AI is unlocking unprecedented potential for sustainable industry development. So under this framework, local for global is playing an essential role, where local green capabilities and innovations contribute to global goals envisioned in Paris Agreement. On one hand, we welcome the formation of international harmonization and mutual recognition of carbon-related trade rules and automotive industry standards under WTO regulations. On the other hand, we are initiating and promoting international digital tools like Catena-X to facilitate this mutual recognition. Catena-X serves as an IT platform and rulebook committed to building an open collaboration framework that connects the global automotive industry chain. It unites automakers, suppliers, and service providers through unified standards to create a trustworthy, collaborative, and open data space. In this local-global approach, green electricity and renewable materials, 2 major carbon reduction measures, can be traced, certified, and have their carbon footprint calculated. This ensures that global efforts contribute effectively to global sustainability targets. So in conclusion, we take a flexible and pragmatic approach, no matter a local-for-local strategy for a resilient supply chain or a local-for-global strategy for global sustainability targets. I believe such kind of flexibility will accelerate the deployment of green technologies, foster fair competition, and ensure that sustainable industry development truly advances human progress while building prosperity for all. Thank you.
好，谢谢吴总啊。
Thank you, Madam Wu. Just now you have mentioned that the local to serve the global and the synergies of the different forces and the multinationals connection with the local companies. In China, yes, I feel that the external turbulences and uncertainties also invite a lot of thoughts about how to stabilize the internal development. Thank you for your sharing. I've been listening to the ideas from 11 panelists very attentively, the ideas from the different corners and from the different uncharted waters even. So thank you very much for your ideas and sharing, which is very inspiring. So the future directions of globalization will be given to the hands of young people. And we're very honored to have the presence of the navigators of the future, Associate Fellow and Han Tong, Charitable Foundation of Civitas Policy Institute of Yancheng, Scholar of PKU, Ms. Wu Yingsi.
Thank you for inviting me to take part in this year's GYLD and to be here at the panel today. My name is Michelle, and I am an Ng Tang Fong Fellow at Civitas Policy Institute, which is a think tank in Hong Kong founded by a veteran politician, Mrs. Regina Ip. And the work we do focuses on promoting Track 2 dialogue and also leveraging Hong Kong's strength to act as a bridge between the Chinese mainland and the rest of the world. So Hong Kong has long been a firm believer and upholder of the multilateral trading system. Since its transformation from a fishing village to the international financial center it is today, we have kept our ports and borders open to the rest of the world. Even when the US government unleashed tariffs this April across the entire world, Hong Kong chose not to retaliate and instead continued its policy of imposing zero customs tariffs on goods from the US or from anywhere else in the world. So nevertheless, in this era of deglobalization and pan-securitization, we're seeing barriers put up even against technologies that were created for the benefit of all mankind. And so in the wake of common challenges, we need joint efforts to address rising concerns including AI, climate change, and even the peaceful use of outer space. And decisions have to be made in a multilateral manner. So this morning and during today's panel, we've had extensive discussions regarding the UN's role in global governance and how it needs to be reformed. And I think today we also, during this panel, we heard a lot about regarding climate change and how countries can work together, maybe leveraging each other's strengths and borrowing each other's experiences to push that forward. And so I think one of the main questions or sort of ideas I was floating around was that what happens now to the rules-based multilateral trading order? Where do we go from here? And I think Hong Kong does have a lot of experience to share because we prospered from globalization and we continue to be a driver of globalization. And it was very insightful to hear from all the speakers today. So thank you for sharing, and I hope that we can continue to be a force for globalization.
好，谢谢米夏。
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you all. We have spent more than 1 hour to create a lot of ideas, and this navigation really need you to join your hands together. Yes, we've been talking about the climate change, AI, supply chain, new blue seas, all of these elements. It is my belief that we have to reconfirm our goals are shared, and cooperation and collaboration and communication will be the means to create the community of the shared future for all humanities, only with which we can really go through the waves on this uncharted water. And as the first hand of this forum in this unnavigated water, it is my great honor to be with all of you, all of the captains here. So with that, I conclude this roundtable. So captains, please take on the stage on that deck that